tell you is that the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, was a train wreck. He was a train wreck, and he was hard to work for. I worked with him previously and in trying to build relationships with Canada so that we knew who was crossing our border.
It is officially clear to me the reason why most liberals are the way that they are. Well, it's because they literally don't know or care to research anything, it seems like. And case in point by today's episode, yikes. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, share, comment your thoughts down below. And not to be clickbaity, because when I say this, I really mean it. But Mark Carney posted something that should absolutely terrify you for more reasons than one. And we're going to break all of that down, fact check it all, the usual shebang, all that and more coming up on Over Opinionated.
The most damning criticism of the Liberal government's gas-powered vehicle ban is not coming from industry. It's not coming from the media. And it may not even be coming from Conservatives. In fact, one of the most vocal opponents of the Liberals' gas-powered vehicle ban is the Environment Minister's very own department. Conservatives have uncovered damning evidence that revealed the Environment Minister was advised on the damage that banning gas-powered vehicle sales would have to Canadians, but plowed ahead with the plan anyways. According to the Environment Minister's very own department, the regulation to ban gas-powered vehicle sales will have a devastating impact to Canadians. The government's own regulatory impact analysis states this policy will, and I quote, lead to a loss of consumer choice for consumers, end quote. In other words, Canadians will have fewer options when choosing a vehicle. The government's internal analysis further reveals that zero-emission vehicles are expected to, and I quote, cost more than non-zero-emission vehicles, end quote. And as the analysis points out, the price increase could, and I quote, lead to a reduction in the quantity of vehicles purchased, end quote. This means fewer Canadians will be able to afford these new, more expensive vehicles. And it gets worse, Mr. Speaker. According to the government's internal report, and I quote, mechanics will likely incur costs to retrofit their shops and invest in training to service ZEVs. These costs would likely be shared with consumers by passing much of the costs on to consumers through higher service costs, end quote. So not only will Canadians be paying more upfront for their vehicles, but they'll also face higher repair costs down the road. The government's internal analysis even highlights the increased wear and tear the Liberals' electric vehicle mandate will have on our highways and roads. And I quote, ZEVs are generally heavier than non-ZEVs due to the size of batteries used to power them. But Mr. Speaker, it even gets worse than that. The analysis reveals the EV mandate will, and I quote, increase the demand on the electricity grid. It goes on to state, and I quote, a significant increase in demand for electricity, particularly at peak time, could lead to an increase in electricity prices, end quote. On top of it, the regulatory impact analysis states the cost of manufacturing, and I quote, tends to be higher than those of non-ZEVs. It goes on to say that those costs, and I quote, are expected to be passed directly to consumers, end quote. In fact, the department states that the Environment Minister's regulations will cost the Canadian consumers over $54 billion. Can you imagine that? $54 billion it's going to cost Canadians.
But they don't care. They don't care that their own department told them this is a really bad idea. This is a terrible investment. They don't care because they care about what's left for them in their stocks, what the payout could be whenever they decide to leave this business. That's what they care about. I don't at all believe that these people genuinely believe in the things that they are talking about. That's clear. Mark Carney has been on video dozens of times over the years, not talking about the good it'll do for the environment, but talking about how profitable this stuff is to get into and to force. So now the man who made his riches by influencing policy is now the policy maker. Wow. What an awesome upgrade that was. Not to anybody else but himself and his wife and their daughter, Cleo, who's involved in the same business. It's just outrageous. And that's probably why he doesn't care at all about not producing a budget, why he can just laugh off and be rude.
Prime Minister, good afternoon. Greg Quinn with Market News. I have a document showing some of the fiscal plans for this year.
Look at that. Looks like it's written on a napkin, Greg.
Well, I don't know whose napkin it is. It said there's a contingency borrowing authority.
Is that the opposition's fiscal plan?
No, it's finances. It says there's a contingency or an option to borrow 95.
What kind of shop are you running? Sorry, Greg. I'm sorry. I respect. Yeah.
Just the executive summary. That's the executive summary.
Okay, start again. You have a document. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But treat it with.
It outlines fiscal plans for this year.
Ew. Now, certainly there's a line there somewhere between like joking around, goofing off, kind of razzing somebody, but I don't know what it is. And there's also like videos of Mark Carney, I'll put it up on screen here, where he's like behaving weird and it's all ha ha ha, it's so funny. Oh, he's just so silly. That gets old really quickly though. That doesn't come off as strong. And even this, like you're talking to a man who's trying to ask you a really serious question, who thought of something and just decided to write it down on whatever it was that he had so that he could ask you this question. And sure, oh, haha, yeah, is that a napkin? What is that? Haha. You're like, bro, you take notes where you can. And so even if he had a napkin where he had written these things down while he's in a rush and he didn't want to forget about it, why are you demeaning somebody because of that? Why are you publicly humiliating them and roasting them and looking back at your cabinet and everybody and laughing about that? There's something about it that just strikes me as high school bully, which is what a lot of the Liberals and NDPs strike me as. And it's just very, very icky.
And it mentions an option to borrow up to $95 billion, excuse me, to cover geopolitical risk. We're in the middle of some delicate trade talks with the U.S. I just wondered, in these circumstances, why do we need to set aside that amount of money to get through this?
Well, in all seriousness, obviously, by my response to your document, I haven't seen what you're talking about, so you're asking me to comment on something I haven't seen, full stop. Then I'm going to tell you something you already know, which is that any responsible government makes contingency plans. The world is in a trade war. The world's in a trade war that is running a risk of a global recession. And if I would note, and you don't need to take it from me, I'll quote the chair of the Federal Reserve this week, who highlighted the risks of stagflation, in other words, inflation. In their judgment, Federal Reserves, what do they know? But this is what they think, that inflation is going up and growth is going to slow in the United States. The world's in the middle of a trade war and several wars, actual wars, including wars that can have quite significant implication for commodity prices, global growth, aside from the human cost that comes with them. Any responsible government, any responsible organization makes contingency plans for those circumstances.
You can say that the world is in a trade war. It doesn't make it true. And it doesn't take a lot to research that, because what happened with Donald Trump is every country except for, as it stands right now, Canada and China have made deals with the U.S. They're actively working on this. Canada said, we got 30 days and then we're going to put counter tariffs on that aren't going to hurt you at all, even though we say that they will. They're only going to hurt Canadian citizens. And this was posted by Mario, who wrote, quick economy reality check, USA versus Canada. The GDP per capita in the U.S. is $80,000. Canada, it's $58,000. Average home price in the U.S. is $420. In Canada, it's $520. And that average home price, by the way, that includes all of like the multi-million-dollar mansions. So that's pretty staggering. Gas prices, $3.70 a gallon. In Canada, it's around $5.20 a gallon. That may have changed as it fluctuates almost every day. But corporate tax, the U.S. is 21%. Canada, 15%. When you include provincial, it's anywhere from 26 to 30%. Federal sales tax, U.S., $0. Canada, 5% GST, 13% HST, depending where you live. Venture capital, U.S., it's the world leader. The lower cost of living is the U.S. The cheaper cost to travel is the U.S. And actually, even if you want to factor in online shopping, in the U.S., when it comes to duties, you have an $800 personal exemption. So you don't get charged duties on anything until you meet that. In Canada, the limit is $20. So on top of already paying for your product, you're also then having to pay a premium to whoever ships it, as well as pay the government so that they get their share in what you purchased. Like, it is sick when you really start to factor in how much we are just robbed. It's unbelievable. And Canadians will argue you on this and they'll say, oh, well, we at least have healthcare. Yeah, we sure do. We don't have doctors, though. People are literally dying in emergency rooms. Actually, personal story, there is somebody in my family who is expecting, and they are undergoing some pretty serious complications. And this happened this past week, they spent 8 hours in one of the emergency rooms, but it was deemed not serious, despite losing their child. And then the following day, after waiting 8 hours as not serious, they went to another emergency room that was way farther away from their house, where they spent about another 4 hours until they actually saw somebody. And then, of course, you'll have people argue oh, well, healthcare's provincial, it's not federal. Well, if that's true, why do we have a federal minister? And if that's true, why is it that everybody's criticizing Alberta for wanting to move to more of a private model, private and public? Why is that? If it's provincially regulated and it doesn't matter and you don't care, why do you care so much then if somebody's trying to do something a little bit different? And also, at the end of the day, every single thing in this country comes down from the top. Everything does. Our provinces are not allowed to prosper and thrive the way that they should due to federal regulations, federal bureaucracy, which, wow, are we ever going to get into that after this? According to Scott Reed on CTV, Mark Carney, man, he is just supreme leader number one, isn't he?
Keep setting the pace. I mean, the secret to Mark Carney's success, and is reflected in high polling numbers for him and low polling numbers for the opposition, is that he has driven the agenda since he became prime minister. Frankly, since he was sworn in as prime minister months ago, it has just been boom, boom, boom. And summertime can, the living can get easy. I don't think the living's going to get easy under Mark Carney. Keep the pace, keep setting, keep driving the agenda. And I have a suspicion that if you do that, the popular support and the public approval will fall into place.
Yeah, I'm also quite confused by Scott Reed saying bang, 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 or boom, boom, boom. Wasn't there a song like that? Bang, bang, boom. There totally was. I don't remember who sang that. That's a good song. Anyway, it is really fascinating because when I look back at things, the first 100 days, what happened? Nothing happened at all. And actually, somebody had responded to my comments on this. I won't read the whole thing, but he says his first 100 days have been, I'm being very kind, meh. He's yacked a lot, delivered little, then disappears on vacation, likely in Europe and mostly on the taxpayer's dime as he continues to visit European leaders for trade. I expected little actually new from him, and he's not disappointing on that front. He changed tone, but quadrupled down on climate change, forced EV purchases, tanker and pipeline bans.
Is that he has driven the agenda.
Mark Carney may very well be banging and booming around the country on your dollar, but wow, he has certainly not driven the agenda at all. Case in point being these posts that went out. And, what it has to say actually about Canada's sovereignty, as well as the foreign policy coordination amongst all of the other World Economic Forum elitists that exist out there who are in government for one purpose and one purpose only, clearly. And I feel like the more time that passes, the more that quote unquote conspiracy theory just becomes so unbelievably in your face a reality that it's almost hard to deal with. Mark Carney and Keir Starmer, as an example, they quite literally were word for word identical, very closely to word for word identical. As you can see here, they both say, almost verbatim, Iran's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security. Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. Return to the negotiating table. And this is not something at all, by the way, where this is just like alignment in a message. This is a shared script. Let's call it for exactly what it is. And what does this suggest to us? That messaging, without a doubt, is being centrally coordinated. I wonder by who? World leaders, or at the very least their PR teams, are working off of shared talking points, possibly distributed by supranational organizations such as the G7, G20, communications, all of that, as well as NATO. Could also be by the U.S. State Department in the case of allies responding to American military action. That's also a possibility, though I'm willing to bet it's more so NATO, G7, G20. And yeah, this is absolutely not a conspiracy, by the way. This is a very common tactic, especially within diplomacy, to show unity. But the lack of originality definitely raises the flags about who's writing this, whose idea is this, why are they doing this, who's really in control here. So while it is standard practice, especially amongst G7, NATO, and other alliances, there is a very big red flag when the same words are used verbatim, because it's not unity, it's uniformity. So sovereign nation, I don't know about that. So word for word cloning, okay, great. We have manufactured consent, not genuine conviction. It also, honestly, more than anything, it insults the intelligence of citizens, which I'm just so tired of with left-leaning governments around the globe. It undermines democratic sovereignty. Of course it does, because again, who is steering the narrative? Who is it that's banging and booming the agenda? Who? Because it's not our prime minister, obviously.
How do you anticipate Iran might respond beyond the missiles, which we've already seen, but into more unconventional means?
Okay, this is a vile regime that didn't just brutally oppress and kill its own people, but is doing the same all around the world. The IRGC is the biggest funder of terror. This is the biggest force that destabilizes the Middle East, let alone all around the world. In Canada, you have more than 700 operatives of the IRGC, by your estimations as well. They've targeted your former justice minister. They've murdered Canadian civilians in the past. They targeted a civilian airplane with 55 Canadian citizens as well. This is a serious threat, and it is unpredictable as well.
How many Canadians do you think actually know about that? Pierre Poilievre talked about it a lot, but how many Canadians do you think know the people that Canada is harboring, the sleeper cells that exist in Canada? I'm willing to bet it's not a lot. And that is without a doubt 100% by design.
I'll tell you is that the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, was a train wreck. He was a train wreck, and he was hard to work for. I worked with him previously and in trying to build relationships with Canada so that we knew who was crossing our border, asking them to take back their citizens that were illegal here in this country. He was very hard to work with. He talked to President Trump about setting up a fentanyl czar so we could deal with the drug issue, but wasn't willing to share criminal background information on individuals with us, wasn't willing to allow us access to some of their data systems that would tell us really who was trafficking a lot of the drugs, the cocaine, the fentanyl that was killing our children.
And again, it makes you wonder, like, these are very serious things that are actually happening here, but nobody in government wants to talk about them. Why don't they want to talk about them? Why are they okay with it? Why are they letting it happen? Is it to completely replace our population? Is it to completely destabilize our population so that they have more control? Isn't it weird how we had this new border czar, and the media talked about him for about a week, and they have not questioned anything about him, what he's up to, what he's doing, what his reports are ever since. To my knowledge, he still has the role. What's he doing? You'd think he'd have updates, no? But there's nothing, there's silence. And it's because of the distraction and the noise. So they say something, they do something, let's just shut you guys up for a while. Great. And now you don't think about it anymore, and we're not going to talk about it because you're not thinking about it. So we're, okay, great, you were shut up. Awesome. Let's keep doing everything else we want to do until another distraction comes up that we need to make you shut up about. I'm Jasmine Lane. Would love to know what you think in the comments down below. Is there a fix to this? Is there a solution? Are we doomed? Is there hope? Are you feeling hopeful of something changing? Because we are not heading in a good direction at all on so many different fronts. It's actually absurd to think about and to recognize that this is actually real and this is actually happening to us and nobody's fighting for us. And then for those of us who do try to fight, we're just like belittled and shamed and criticized and name called into oblivion in true fascist formation. Anyway, this is Over Opinionated. Again, be sure to comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe, follow, like, comment. I already said that. Share the video, all of that stuff that helps us fight against the multi-billion-dollar government propaganda machine that is the mainstream media and government's own messaging and the way that they are able to manipulate algorithms, thanks to Bill C-11 and C-18 and manipulate the news and what you're allowed to see. And it's a whole thing. Anyway, I will talk to you tomorrow.